And with that, again, thank you, Deb. I know you're listening. I'd like to acknowledge, all the work that she's put into these efforts to continue growing their Pawnee corn. And the Omaha tribe, we have many stories about how we got corn. One of them is that the Pawnee and the Arikara people, the Arikara are now currently in North Dakota, but they were one people at one time. And we had received the gift of corn from the Arikara. And there's a lot more into that story, of course, that's, thousands of years old. In 2018, I witnessed the reunification of the Pawnee and the Arikara people. It took place in Norfolk, Nebraska. The Ponca tribe hosted them for the weekend, and they all came from North Dakota and Oklahoma to reunite their two peoples. And it was fascinating to hear from both tribes about their experience, about their languages, about their songs, and how they both had developed into very different peoples, but at the core, they still had the same values and teachings. So in that story, to me, there's always hope. And I was really grateful because I really believed that it was a historic meeting that I was attending to and helping in that process of that healing again. Again, that teaching behind that is that what was done to us in the separation of peoples, which took place throughout Turtle Island, was a travesty and is a travesty to this day. The separation of all of us from one another in our trade processes, in our relationship building, nation building. It's only like more recently that we've begun to address those healing processes that can bring us together so that we can reestablish what we once had, what made this continent a thriving and rich continent, full of our indigenous foods and medicines. And I always address that when I'm doing any keynotes or any presentations, lectures, and so forth. What I say is that I want to ask a question, or maybe two. And I always ask the audience, especially when they're primarily non-native. And I say, you call us primitive, but did we poison the water? For living here for thousands upon thousands of years, did we poison the water? And everybody shakes their head. Next is, did we destroy the land? After living here for thousands and thousands of years again. And again, everybody's shaking their heads. No. So, who is primitive at this time? Those designations of certain words, I again say, let's, take them to the exit and get them out of here. That thinking has to change. So you heard from our seed warrior, and I know she doesn't like that word, but you heard from our seed warrior, Deb Echohawk, and we're going to have next our panel discussion. And I'd like to introduce the panelists. You heard Dr. Darshan Elena Campos earlier in the keynote. We also have Cynthia Ellis-Topsey. Am I saying that right? Cynthia? Okay. Garifuna. and she's the ambassador leader of the Garifuna Renaissance Project. We also have Jazlyn Gill. Okay, Sicangu, Lakota, mentor and Bluebird Cultural Initiative. We also have Samantha Jones. She is Winnebago, Omaha, and Cheyenne River Sioux. She is the Youth Program Specialist, Bluebird Cultural Initiative. And today I will be moderating the panel discussion, monitoring too, but moderating. And this will give us a chance. We got a couple minutes here, but would you each come to the stage? We can set up and get going, and And I really liked how Brandon and Lydia had moderated earlier. I'm going to use the same model, and allowed the audience to ask questions. Because, of course, I didn't come up with any questions. So, I really appreciate that. We have all our methods, and, why should I have to work even harder than I am in order to create something that, make it easy. So, thank you so much. And I'd like to ask each panelist to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name's Jazlyn Gill. I'm a member of the Sicangu Lakota from Rosebud, South Dakota. I am a senior at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I am majoring in animal science. I plan on becoming a veterinarian. I would like to work with our buffalo herds. I know the herds are very important to us, and we don't have a lot of native people who are in that field.
Good afternoon. Hold on, can you hear me? Okay. New to this. Good afternoon, my name is Samantha Jones. I'm a youth program specialist with Bluebird Cultural Initiative. I work with the Native youth and families here in Nebraska, and we work with also peoples of South Dakota as well. And I do our Sacred Sisters youth group, and that's our female Native youth from 12 to 18. And I am enrolled in the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska, and I'm also descendant of Omaha and Cheyenne River Sioux and Ute relatives as well.
Good day, good afternoon in Garifuna, and I want to give thanks to those who came before me, before us. I want to thank the nation that gave us the space, the Umonhon Nation people who allow us to be here. I want to give thanks to my ancestors on whose shoulders I stand. I want to introduce the delegation that I'm a part of. I did not come here alone. Many of my ancestors, our ancestors, are in this room. And specifically, I would like to ask Dr. Narcissus Torres and Dr. Annabelle Ford to stand, because they are part of the delegation that I'm here with. Thank you. It's a privilege and an honor to be here. I am the daughter of Godsman Ellis, and I'm also the daughter of Ethel Ellis, my 93-year-old mother, who is alive, strong, kicking, and healthy, and sending you greetings from the Garifuna Nation. I am not only I'm not only ambassador at large for the Garifuna Nation, but I'm also a cultural ambassador for Belize and a champion for pyramids and sites preservation in Belize, of which we have hundreds. I'm a mother of 5 children and 17 grandchildren and counting. So it is an honor to be here. I love you all and already consider you my relatives.
My name is Darshan Elena Campos, and I want to offer my gratitude to Cynthia for giving me a talking to last night when I wanted to go out and get myself a drink. You're right. Thank you. I needed that. We stayed home and drank together in circle, and it was beautiful. My name is Darshan Elena Campos again, and I am Taina. I'm Indigenous Caribbean, with lots of proud African warrior ancestry. I say that I am Boricua because it is Borican, the island of my grandmother. Guayama is her hometown that called me to her at a time of crisis. I am also a cacica. I am a leader of my people, self-appointed. We welcome you.
At this time, I'd like to open up the floor for any questions. And remember what the topic is. We're talking about, I'm looking at my agenda. We're talking about seeds, rematriation, everything that has to do with how we grow food, and any question that you have toward that, just in what you have been listening to today.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to garden but is not good at it? Or rather has never grown one before? How do you start?
Touch a tree. Just touch a tree. Just touch a tree. Just touch a tree. To me, that's how you start.
First of all, I would like to acknowledge that in this room are many treasures, and I would like you or us to look at each other around the table and ask each in the room that question. However, from my perspective, I'll just tell you a little story. Everything that we need to know is already in our DNA. Nothing is by accident. Everything comes long before we are here. And we were listening to the documentary about seeds and preservation of ancient knowledge that we all have. It's already in your DNA. So before I came to this gathering, to this summit, I was prepared, and I prepared myself by reenacting the rituals of the Garifuna and the Maya people, and humbling and surrendering myself or yourself to that knowledge that is already within you. You get all the guidance and all the direction that you need. When I was a little baby, I almost died, and my mother was holding me as a dying baby in her arms, and my father had run many miles to get help. I was delivered by a Maya midwife in a Maya village as a Garifuna person, as I said, because the missionaries, they sent us out, they sent us forth. And so while my mother was waiting for me to die, she had this vision, she had this dream about a plant that she could give me that would save my life. So much of the knowledge is already in your physical and spiritual DNA. So tap into it. And that plant, which we call physic nut, is a plant that we as my family call a miracle plant. So you have the knowledge already within yourself and within this room. So when Sister Queen was encouraging us to meet and mingle and talk with one another, there's a lot of knowledge in this room about plants, about gardening.
So, hello. Did it shut off? Bear with me. Okay. So to that, I would say plant something that you like, make it fun for yourself. You know, if I was talking to one of my girls or youth group, I would say start little. Don't have this grandiose idea that you have to have an acre of garden. It just starts with a seed and it just starts small. And maybe it starts with wildflowers, maybe it starts with lavender, but just starting little and then seeing what evolves from that.
Okay, so I have a little commercial break. I had two of my relatives around that table, Dr. Annabelle Ford and Dr. Narcissus Torres. I want to encourage you to speak with them because that has been our life's work. He's a master forest gardener, and we have a lot of information of the example of how it's done in Belize. We work in a particular model called the El Pilar, and it is exploring solutions past, and we will add for the present. That young lady, Dr. Ford, who is from University of California, Santa Barbara, she and I met, that's another story. But the point is that we are two women walking from different cultural perspectives on the same path. Plants, if you walk around here, Dr. Torres could give you a tour of your own space of plants that regenerate themselves. Gardening is not a concept that you dig a hole and you put a seed in it and you make it grow. The nature and the plants are already generating themselves. And master forest gardeners, and they will talk about it later on, talk about plants recommending themselves. But we as human beings have the audacity to think that we are the ones who are in control. But the indigenous people, the indigenous way is to respect, to honor, and to love the plants. So we don't have to do anything but be surrendering and allowing ourselves to learn from the beauty, the strength, and the power of the plants that are living beings.
I have a question for all of us here. How many of us are actually seed keepers? It would be good to notice in the room. So these are some of the people to be speaking to, especially local folks. I also invite people, come and work with me. I will help you raise the funds. I can go anywhere these days and I can identify how to grow a forest. I am a landless person. I grew up on welfare. I did not know how to touch the earth at all. But trees talk to me and tell me secrets, and they're not secrets at all. You just have to say, love is our answer.
I just want to say a little something, just a little about the Garifuna people. My Gula Queen sister, she was noticing the reason why I wear this is for Indigenous Day. This is the colors of the Garifuna people. We have our own flag. We are a sovereign people. No matter what the colonials say, we declare ourselves a sovereign people. And these colors are the flag of the Garifuna people. And our brother from Liberia, I want to acknowledge him. Give him a round of applause. He ministered to us last night as we spoke to our queen here, encouraging her to speak from a place of power to speak of a place from a place of victorious, to speak from a place of transformation, to speak from a place of changing the narrative, to speak from a place of making lemonade out of lemons, right, brother? He gave his testimony of what happened in Liberia. No offense to you men, but it is the women of Liberia who transformed the narrative of Liberia. They were the ones who said, enough is enough, right, brother? And they circled the men and they said, we are not going to stop until this abuse changes. So we as women are the ones who will and can take the leadership. We are the ones, the narrative of the Garifuna people, the one that was not told by the colonialists, is that we were traders, kings and queens from Mali, Africa, who traversed before Columbus and those characters came over here and pillaged and genocided. We were explorers and we were traders. And as women, we wove the seeds in our braids. We put them in our skirts. So we are the ones who will have to be the ones to lead and transform this conversation about food sovereignty. We are the ones that we have been waiting for.
Okay, questions? Okay. All right.
So to my sister from Garifuna and cousin over there from Liberia, you know, we know this Gullah Geechee is found in Liberia. You know this, right? Okay, real talk, cousin. Now, you know, I told you, Garifuna women have come and visited me in the Gullah Geechee Nation. And we've done the punta and things like this. Okay, so I would love to know, do you have ceremonial dances, like we have the ring shout, which I'm sure you're familiar. Do you have those types of ceremonial dances that you still do amongst the Garifuna to also help with your liberation and your continuation?
Thank you for this question, Sister Queen. I will just need a little clarification. Thank you. That in my veins run the blood of indigeneity. Thankful to the Native Americans, the first people who were here, who took us in, who took care of us. They used to call us Caribs. Caribs were the first people who were here before the Europeans. When I here, I mean the whole of the Americas. I'm claiming the whole of the Americas, right? So we have a combination. Garifuna, we have African and we have Native American, the first peoples. So we are like the bridge, we are the connect. The beauty of what saved us was our rituals. What saved us was holding on to our being and our sense of knowingness. And many times we had to hide because the colonizers we were punished if we were practicing our ways of being. So our ways of being had to be underground. It had to be in codes. You know, even how I dress, the colors that we use, the way I tie my head. If you're looking at me, I would take off the wrap, or I would tie it, maybe I could tie it in 100 different ways. And those ways are sending codes of what messages like Harriet Tubman style. Harriet Tubman, the Underground Railroads, is not about underground, and it's not a railroad, but it is about wrapping around the world where we embrace each other in oneness. So our music, our drums, our songs, our stories are forms of healing. Somebody was asking me the other day, why when the Prince of England, well, you know, William and Princess Kate came, you know? First of all, we are all in here are queens, we are all in here are kings, princes and princesses. As a child, as a Garifuna child, I was told that I am a queen. I believed that. I internalized that. And we are told that in our rituals. Before I came to this summit, I was in a ritual in the south of the country called the Dugu, in the Dabuyeba, right? The Dabuyeba. And she was telling me, Sister Queen here, that they have the same world. So if we become aware of our songs, our musics, and our stories around the world, all the way in India, 2 Tibetan monks told me that when they meditate and they pray, they use the word D, which Garifuna also use. So the songs and the stories, the drums talk. The drums are not just about music. It's not just about dancing. So when Prince William and Kate came to our Garifuna community, I was there present to tell him that this dancing is not entertainment. This dancing is for healing of all of us, for the genocide that you did to our people. Let us dance together, Prince William. Let us dance together to heal for those prisoners that we have had in Gloucester prison in England, where our people were incarcerated all over the world. But even though we were incarcerated physically, we were not incarcerated mentally, all right? So we dance and we shuffle and we sing and we scream and we laugh and we shout to release and to detox from that trauma that I'm telling our baby here, that must not become a part of our beingness. We are learning from the people, the women of Liberia, enough is enough. When I sing, I start the song. Last night we did it. You continue the song. You continue the poem. You continue the dance. It is one dance. So I tell Prince William and I told Princess Kate, we are here to heal from the atrocities that your ancestors did to us. You know why I shake this shaka? This is not a musical instrument. The seeds inside of it are sacred. As Sister Queens were talking about, they pray over the seeds. They pray over the food. With Garifuna, our main food is cassava, right? Cassava is a richness. It represents fertility, purity, prosperity. And when we are planting the cassava, we are praying. When we are harvesting the cassava, we are praying. We make sure that every time we are giving thanks, because it didn't come out of the blue, it is through the spirit of our ancestors. We have 3 drums, right? And each of the drum beats like the beat of the heart. Imagine you were in the Daboyeba. When these beautiful queens were dancing yesterday, all of us would have been following them and dancing with them, because they're leading us into a spirit of healing, into a spirit of transformation. And in this time, they were praying and they're talking about different things, and you could add to the things and the dance. We could talk about the food. We could talk about where we're going to store the food. Thousands of years we have stored seeds. Nobody has to know where those seeds are stored, but we know.
Hello, thank you so much. I have a question around storytelling and how, for each of you, your experiences in documentation of, like, documenting what's happening, but also the histories that you've received, and how you maybe tell those stories to the young people that you work with or the families around you. What are some of the challenges and opportunities in that? You know, I'm taking pictures here to help hopefully tell this story, but how are each of you, I think a part of seed keeping is that story keeping and storytelling as well. So.
Well, for us, with Bluebird, we do a lot of ceremonies, and like how it is among most tribes during ceremony, you really can't have photography and like videotaping, because it's just, you're supposed to, people, my grandfather says, the people who are there are supposed to be there, and like you're supposed to experience what is happening within that moment. Like nobody, like if you're outside of that, then you just miss that experience. But so we have a coming of age ceremony that we do in the summer for our young ladies, and we just teach them about like making moccasins and rawhide belts and just the utility things, and we tell them like what's the importance of them and like how they're supposed to carry themselves once they leave that ceremony. Yeah.
So the camp she's talking. I'm having a heck of a time with this microphone. I'm sorry. But the camp she is talking about is the Ishnanti camp for our girls, and it talks about when they receive their moon and what responsibilities and how now you're no longer a child but you're a woman, and so this ceremony is conducted to where they're treated like children for the last time. So you know, where we're doing a lot of things for them, and we're also instilling that, you know, now that you're transitioning into this time of your life where you're a woman, you can no longer partake in some things that when you were a child, but you also learn new responsibilities as a woman. So when you're in the community that's getting up to help serve, that's respecting your elders and helping them first, and excuse me, but the also responsibilities of why we're so powerful when we're in our moon. What does that mean? Because we can hold life within us, we create life within us, and that's something very powerful, and why that is powerful, and why we can't hold medicines, we can't hold certain things during that time, because that power can seep out into it and ruin it. So just really explaining those rituals and practices with them gives those girls more of a sense than just the biological aspect that they get in school. And it helps give them more meaning and more belonging to not only the community that they're in, but to themselves, and learning more about themselves, because those transition periods are really hard. You know, even as a woman, if you have, no matter what your upbringing is, learning your place in this world is very hard for anybody and everybody. So those stories and those kind of documenting, it's really just repetition, and it's really helping them learn that lines of the oral tradition and paying attention, and you know, putting down your phone and actually listening, and then okay, tell me what you heard. So just having more conversations really is kind of the best way, I think, for our kids to learn, and just having those repeated conversations, and then just them seeing it over and over, because Jazzy is an all-star Ishnanti camp, and she's done it a lot of years.
I think this past summer was our 8th year. We did 4 years up in South Dakota, and then 4 years. We brought the ceremony down here for our Native youth, since there's not that many opportunities here.
And for our girls, I know them seeing that, and we have repeat girls who come every year, and that's what they look forward to as well. So seeing the people they look up to conduct themselves the way we do, and also teach the way we do, I know inspires them, even if they don't say it. I know it does help with that belonging and that identity.
Thank you, Queen. The first thing what I'd like to share is that we are in a university right now without walls. And if we as Indigenous people acknowledge that our ways of knowing and being are the way, and that we can affirm, I was having a conversation with one of the brothers just now, that I want to interact with the universities here in the United States only because we are looking for complementarity, and not, I mean, the reason why hundreds of university people come to our countries, come to my community doing research, is because they know that we have something of value. So the challenge is for us to affirm the fact that we have something of value for ourselves. And therefore, I want to acknowledge Dr. Narciso Torres. I would like him to stand up again, and Dr. Annabelle Ford, because as Sister Queen was saying earlier on, there are certain doors that I could not walk into. I could not be here if Dr. Ford, being who she is, within these structures and systems, knowing how to navigate them, would open a space for people like us to come in. So that's something I want to acknowledge in terms of our strategy forward and the documentation and the storytelling. Among ourselves, we have the documentation by our ways of being, by our ways of knowing, by our ways of counter mapping, by our ways of passing on the information from generation to generation. Everything I learned of significance, I learned at the feet of my grandparents and the community who taught me different ways of going to the farm, of processing the cassava, and so on and so forth. So let us establish, honor, and value who we are, and establish relationships of who we are in this room. We don't need any project. We don't need any program. All we need is who we are and what we have. When I lived here in these United States of America, I went to school every day with my children to make sure I find out what it is these teachers were teaching my children. Because what happened is that when they go home, I will have to debrief them in terms of who they are. And the children were being told things that had no significance to their reality. They became traumatized because they came from an environment where you have the freedom of going into the largest barrier reef in the world, in a place where you have pyramids, in a place where you have hieroglyphs, in a place where you have a sense of masterpiece civilization in the Americas and in the world. And therefore, relatives, we have everything that we need in this room. And therefore, we need to decree and declare that and present ourselves to these institutions. Don't blame them. Don't quarrel or fuss with them. But let them know that we are the ones who are the beginning of civilization. That is a fact. They know it and we know it. So I had a conversation with Dr. Annabelle Ford, who has worked 40 years with the El Pilar archaeological site that embraces Belize, Guatemala. We don't have no boundaries or borders in our indigenous way of being. And I said to her, Dr. Ford, if you have learned all of this from Master Forest Gardener Narciso Torres, therefore as a master, he requires acknowledgement from your university. And the Chancellor of the University of California, Santa Barbara, appointed him Citizen Scientist Award, the Chancellor of the university. He got the Chancellor's Award, somebody who never finished high school or don't have any letters behind his name. Give him a round of applause. And this is in every facet of life in terms of documentation. I go to universities here, speak to midwives, and I tell them, guess what? We have midwives in villages who deliver babies, 1,000+ babies, and never lost a baby. Come and learn from these midwives in Belize, Maya, Garifuna, Mestizo. Obviously, they are doing something right. And therefore, let us move forward from out of this room and declare how we are going to put our curriculum together in terms of the documentation. It's already documented. The Hopi have been mapping, counter mapping in their own ways. No GPS, you know. The people, the women of Liberia, let's go have a conversation with them. When they said enough is enough, when they went to the United Nations, brother, how did they do it? What did they say? What can we learn from them? How can we document that? We want to hear. We have a whole storytelling. Let's have a whole storytelling conference.
I'm very much holding on to the wisdom of my elder, Ambassador Cynthia, to emphasize the positive. However, I want to speak that while we have our Dr. Torreses and our Dr. Fords, we also have a lot of demons. I have names. Harriet Festing, we will defund you. Zulma Oliveras Vega, I know what you did, other people need to know, and I will tell you if you have roots connected to Boricua. If you don't need to know our tribal bullshit. But the thing is, you need to know the names because these people are gatekeepers. Another one, Tara Rodriguez Besosa. And I want to, as a two-spirit person who is very, very confident in who I am at the same time that I every day want to resign from humanity, no, I hear you. We're going to turn up the love. So if you have questions about Tara Rodriguez Besosa, if you have questions about Zulma Oliveras Vega, if you have questions about Maria Benedetti, if you have questions about Harriet Festing, come to me. I will show you evidence. I am an archivist. I went into the archives with grannies and aunties to take down the oldest standing statue of Christopher Columbus, which was in Cahokia, now known as St. Louis. I am here to expose our supposed allies. Sadly, we need people like me. So if you are a girl who sparkles, you know I'm looking at you, Sabrina. Walk with that power. Take down the predators. They are doing so much damage, and they make so much more money than any of us do. And I live in public housing on welfare because I turn down money. I have many people that want to fund me. Major basketball players. I keep names in my back pocket because the thing is, I would rather live honestly. Right now, I'm going to say something very, very, very painful that needs to be said. So hand over your heart, cover your ears. I am the person in my community who has cleaned up after the police have left. My neighbors have seen me do what nobody else can do because they are grieving as an indigenous people unrecognized by their own colonial government who have never left their ancestral homeland. I am that person who scrubbed the floor while people watched from windows. So when I misspoke earlier and said, I am self-appointed, that was me in my own delusion, forgetting that my people have already named me Kasika because they have asked me to do other things to protect our people, because the SWAT teams come in and bodies drop and nobody can say a thing, because everybody in my community where I live, everybody is a survivor of gun violence of the most horrendous nature, and only some of the times is it coming from the cops. It's often from people who look exactly like us, and the bodies that are dropping, for the most part, are 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old brown and black men. So, if a girl who looks like me, who doesn't even want to be a girl, can go into a community and clean up, think about what you can do within yours. You do not have to be me. Please don't be me. Trust me. I would resign in a second. But the thing is, I have a gift that I cannot turn away from. My grandmother kept spiders in her building because it was there where we would find not only our healing, but we would weave a free future.
My indigenous family, good afternoon. I know my dear older sister has made a lot of comment about my country. But one thing I'd like to share with you all is that as all indigenous people, it's about time that we write and tell our own story. Many times story has been told about who we are, who we really not are. And the whole world believes, especially if the story is told by a Caucasian. Because the institutions are there to give you the picture of what they think they want people to see you to be. If they want you to be an animist, if they want you to be a villain, if they want you to be uncivilized, if they want you to be someone who is completely ignorant, they will create the mystery of that character. We all have been told different stories in our own heritage. I had my 7-year-old son went to school, and then at the time, he's in college now, and the professor sent a letter. She wanted to show the movie. Remember in the early 90s, there was a genocide in Central Africa, in Rwanda. Some of you saw the movie Hotel Rwanda. She wanted to show the movie to the kids. As good as it is historical, it is cultural, it had a lot of other. So she sent a note and asked, we sign off to show the movie. And I asked him, did she have the chance to explain to you what the movie is about? He said no. I said, okay. I paid a visit at the school. And I went to the assistant principal office. I asked for the teacher to come. I said, have you signed up on this information? The teacher wants to show a movie. She said she was not aware. They invited the teacher in the office. And I asked the teacher, what is the purpose, what is the lesson you want to teach about this movie to 7th graders? She said, well, I was just watching the movie and I like it, so I wanted them to see it too. Imagine that. The first question I asked her, have you completed telling the story of your own genocide in America? That was the first question I asked her. Have you completed all the history accounts of your own genocide in America? If you have exhausted your own history of telling the truth, then you can go beyond to make reference to other people's history. But you cover up your history so deeply that even no matter what paint can cover it up, but you still ignore it. And you want to tell another cultural history. And I challenge you, if you ever show this movie in the school, it's because my son is of an African origin. That's his heritage. Because sooner or later, everything in the class we're going to see, the Africans are beasts, they are villains, they just get up, and then he's going to shy away from the cultural values that I want to give him. Indigenous cultural value. He's going to say, well, I don't want to be a part of it. I say, if you do that, I will sue the district. And that was the challenge. And after he came home, I called him. I said, well, son, I'm not going to be completely anti-information. But before you watch this movie, we'll watch it together. I will explain to you the history behind the movie, what led to the genocide, which she was not prepared to do. Maybe she was only watching the movie on the popcorn in your living room, and she felt entertained by it, so she wanted to show it out. And I went to work, explained to him, we watched the movie together, he had a different understanding. So, sin, do not let people tell your history as young people. Tell your own story. Go and visit the elders in your community who have walked the mile before you. Tell me about this other chief in in our history book. Who was he? Tell me about the last cuisine that you remember cooking, how we cook it. Let that be the kind of information you acquire and you pass down to your generation, the people, your cultural way of life. Do not allow anyone to tell your story for yourself. Be your own storyteller. Just my own comment for. So if you care to comment about it.
I want to share a story of how I told my neighbors, most of whom have not completed the 10th grade, about me coming here and also preparing to go to COP28, so the UN Conference on Climate Change. And I want to again thank Sheila Barefoot. And Sabrina, your last name just flew out of my head. Thank you, Chapa. So everybody within my community is a survivor, and my closest friends have anyway. How I told them was, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna love this. So I'm known in my community as don't fuck the police. Because one day I was arrested, and when the cops came up to me and they asked me my name, I said, fuck the police. I'm famous in my community. I make everybody giggle, and if they don't giggle, they say thank you when I give them bananas. Anyway, so I said to Beba, and I said to my dear friend Jennifer, who are both survivors of police terrorism, said, guess what I'm getting paid to do? I said, I'm receiving $500 to say, fuck the police. And they burst out laughing, which for us is sometimes the only medicine we have, because we live in public housing in Puerto Rico in 2023. Our island was invaded in 1493, and the predators are still trying to run things. And oh my God, are they corrupt? And the evidence is overwhelming. Overwhelming. So what do? We laugh and we light up a blunt. We are a happy, happy medicine people. And marijuana, for many of us, is the only way that we can survive. So my storytelling here, for a community like mine that has been massacred not just by genocide in terms of the invasion, but quote unquote, the drug wars. For my community to be able to say, don't fuck the police, while we sit on the stoop knowing we could be shot, because literally it happened 3 days ago, right where we're standing, smoking a blunt. And if you have seen Beba break into laughter, if you have seen Jennifer's eyes sparkle, if you knew the 5 generations in that family the way I do, you would scrub the ground too.
Thank you.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I'm bringing back to the seeds. I recognize the woman carried the seed from the beginning. That's why this room is full of all of us here. Just a comment.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Okay. Thank you all for the answers you have provided already. This is an incredible discussion, and the question I want to ask builds off of that. I want to know the barriers that you have had to expressing your Indigenous womanhood, and what you have done and continue to do to express your Indigenous womanhood authentically in a way that works for you. Part of why I feel we don't have Indigenous womanhood defined on there is because it is unique to each and every one of us. And especially, it is something that has been, in the broad popular media, something that is uniquely fetishized. It is fetishized, it is exotified, and we are told that we can be the sexy Indian princess, or we can be the squaw, or we can be a corpse. Yeah. And those are pretty much the options we're given. That's why we have an altar to missing and murdered Indigenous women. So yes, my question, to repeat it after all that, is the barriers you have had to expressing your Indigenous womanhood and what you have done and continue to do to be able to express your Indigenous womanhood authentically. And I am targeting this question a bit more towards some of the youth on the panel.
So thank you for that question. So I guess for myself, it would be looking at who was the person I wanted when I was younger? Who did I need when I was younger? And becoming that for me today, and taking the teachings of my mom, my grandmothers, my auntie, and surrounding myself with other Indigenous women who are powerful and who have something to offer me within their wisdom, within just mentoring and watching them walk, taking each little bit parts that I know stick with me and help me, and staying in spaces and holding my ground, knowing some spaces aren't for me, but making myself adapt and just carrying knowledge and growing. And I think it's still a journey of, sorry, my brain's thinking them faster than my mouth, so give me a second. Staying on the journey of being confident and gaining that belonging of knowing where you are, and understanding the places and the people around you to understand who you are too. And it's not only older women, it's our kids too. It's our young girls. You know, I see our youth group and I'm inspired by them because they'll get up without me saying anything. They'll stand up and round dance. They'll stand up and dance. They'll stand up and say something. And just seeing them be confident in who they are and helping them and talking with them, that helps me too. And you know, the barriers, I think growing up in Omaha, there was no representation for me. In my schools, throughout my education, there was no Indigenous women representation. So really just kind of looking for opportunities and looking for experiences that would help me with that, you know, whether it was going to powwow, whether it was seeing something like this, it's just going. And even if it was alone, being okay to be alone, to still learn and experiences those things to help grow yourself.
For me, I would say some barriers that I've faced is, well, especially like being in like Omaha public schools, there's not a big Native American population. So there would be some times where I'd have to miss school because I had ceremonies to attend, or like I had funerals, and for us, our funerals are 4 days. So my mom would have to write letters to the school explaining them why I had to miss 4 or 5 days of school, and they don't understand that. So I think just bringing more awareness to like the public of like how we have these ceremonies that are really important to us. And then also growing up, I had my mom and my aunt and my grandma, and they were like important people to me, like role models that I look up to, and like how they carry themselves. And then even with my friends, sometimes they're like, oh, can we go do this? Can we go do that? I'm like, I can't. I have to go help with this coming of age ceremony, or I have to go help harvest. And sometimes they just don't understand, like, oh, like, can't you just miss that? I'm like, no, these are like important to me. Like, it's part of who I am. So like, why would I want to take the time to go do it? Because, you know, not a lot of the youth have that opportunity to be able to do the things that I can. So I try to take up the chance anytime I can.
The greatest barrier that I faced was other people's interpretation of who I am, and being self-conscious about being my authentic self, recognizing that I am different, unique, or whatever term they'd want to interpret me by. But once I overcame that, then I, as Sister Queen say, I'm a warrior. And I really want to wrap up by saying, by doing that and stepping into that power, somebody said earlier on, of being an inspiration to others, not by what I say, but what I do, and daring to challenge myself to be the best that I can. I want to say also, like when we speak about youth, and transformation is ageless, meaning my grandchildren advise and inform me daily. I listen to them. So they have a saying, child is father of the man. So I'm not feeling here as an elder that I know everything. I rather you lead not for the future, but now. So I am a vision uplifter. And I tell my story because of my children. My children and many young people don't know what I was blessed to do. As I said earlier, would have been paramount chief of the Garifuna people. I've been a diplomat for 16 countries in the Caribbean. I've been a Kellogg Fellow, selected 60 of us out of 2,000 people in the world. Just before I left here, people from all over the country and the world are calling me and asking me to be a part of a conversation. So this started from when I was little. Why? Because my grandmother and me as a grandmother told me who I am and who I must be. Two things, Sister Queen, and I shared with her yesterday. I am not to be incarcerated and I am not to be murdered. Many of my friends in the Caribbean and in Central America have been murdered. I don't speak from that place intentionally because the narrative is going to be changed. And that is the renaissance of the Garifuna people. That is our gift to humanity. I go to the Prime Minister of our country and present myself as ambassador, even though the colonial structure did not appoint me as such. I embrace my country and say, we are not poor, sister. We are wealthy because we command thousands of acres of pristine rainforest, no matter what government structure says. So I am inviting you in wrapping up this session as a young person. Oh my God. I arrived at Omaha Airport, Queens, and I will show you the picture. Teen Queen USA and I met in the bathroom. Don't worry about the bathroom part. She had on her crown. And I said, wow, can I feel your crown? She said, I can put that crown on you, ambassador, because I introduced myself to her as such. She said, I'm meeting a whole ambassador. I said, yes, and more. And she put that crown on my head. She crowned me, that 17-year-old young woman. And that's what we need to do in our oneness here. Let us have conversations and tell the stories and go beyond to this Sister Queen, strategizing how we're going to trade with each other. When I was a diplomat for Caribbean countries, 16 Caribbean countries, sitting down with these men, talking about trade agreements and all of that, you know what I said to those men? They had put millions of dollars into a project. I said, it's the women of the Caribbean that are moving goods and services throughout this region. So you need to acknowledge, affirm, and acclaim them. All of us with our university degrees could not meet my grandmother, who could take thousands of dollars out of her apron pocket and hand to us because she was moving goods and services from Belize throughout Central America. So we, sisters and brothers, are the ones we've been waiting for. I'm sorry, I needed to address my queen here. Before my sisters and brothers were murdered in the region of the Caribbean and Central America, I remember what my grandmother had told me. So I could see, and I'm not critiquing my queen, but everybody has to be who they are. We know that the United States of America is the significant power broker in the world, one of the brokers. Why would I point my finger into the eye of the United States? It's not just about me. It's about all the people who are affected by me. Our Garifuna people learned guerrilla warfare, meaning that you think I'm here, but I'm over there. All right? So we need to use those strategies of indigeneity that worked. We need to, when you're calling me a house nigger, because it seems to you that I am compromising or betraying the people, you have no idea that I am the one giving the message to the other people that you're not supposed to come here because the landmines are here. So we need to learn sometimes to be quiet, to be calm, to play the fool to catch the wise. In the Garifuna guerrilla warfare, men dress like women so that the colonizers would think that they were women, but it was actually men dressed in women clothing who were able to fool the colonial master in more ways than one. Let's get back to those strategies.
With that, I want to send a big shout out to our people in Algeria and what is now known as Israel for their amazing work in also using hijab, wearing sacred garments to do what needs to be done. There's a lot that I could say, and I've spoken too much, but this is important to say. The biggest barrier to me, sadly, has been fake Indians and wannabe Indians. So, yes, white Christian women, white Jewish women, fake allies, sadly, even after oh so much testimony and shared circle. But it is the fake Indians and the wannabes that for me have been the greatest barrier. The fake Indians. They use our ancestral practices and they call it ceremony and think that they own us and our land. I know some of their names on Boricua. They are incredibly dangerous because of the power that they wield in terms of gatekeeping, fundraising, and literally basic traditional ecological knowledge. The wannabes. Some of us on the island of Boricua, for example, are white people who do have some African and Native ancestry. But having African and Native ancestry doesn't necessarily make you an ally to Native people, whether we are from the Caribbean, Africa, Australia, wherever, including Palestine. And I want to, with that, say the Palestinian people are an indigenous people, religiously diverse. And I work for Palestinian liberation. I know that sadly, I have to speak a lot, but I know how to be quiet. I am the person who usually disappears in the room that is black and brown. I know that is a privilege for me to be there. And usually, I don't need to be, but I'm asked to be in the room. There is no way to express the humility and gratitude I feel. Thank you.
Emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Have no fear for atomic energy. None of them gonna stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. We got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? All I ever had, redemption song. These songs of freedom. Have no fear for nothing or anybody.
Sorry, basic housekeeping. So, the medicine room is now open and welcoming to all people should you need a space of release, refuge, silence. Anything that is on the spirit tables that I have created, if it calls to you, please take it home. I would really love to enter my home empty-handed for once. I'm really tired of carrying around other people's dirty laundry or our sacred objects that I'm bringing home for our people. These ones are gifts. So please, if you feel called, anything is for the taking, and I am happy to share with you the stories. I also made a playlist for our gathering. It's a beautiful collection of songs that sings the prayer that is now coming into my life, because my sister girl Jessica, the Black Muslim mother of Kamal, we were chatting the other day and she said, what is our prayer moving forward? And we were both stumped. And so my homework was to get to listen to some of the most beautiful of our freedom fighters of song and word and drum and beat. So I will share that with you tomorrow for people who are interested, or maybe later on today. I don't know, I'm really tired. I could eat something, please.
Again, I'd like to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you for wonderful presentations. Your voices are so much needed in this day and time. And please give them a warm round of applause and thanks. And what we're going to do now that we're coming to an end for our panel discussion is I'd like to see, having a 10-minute break and coming back at 4. And then we're going to have some singing. We're going to close with some songs with women. So we don't have a set agenda on that. So perhaps, I can start off by singing maybe 1 or 2 songs and then turn it over, because I know we have a lot of singers. So, with that, let's take a break. Thank you again so much. This is heavy work. Believe me, I know how that feels. So, we blaha, with the wongide, all my relations.